all right. What's happening? What's happening? It's Brian Forbes. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the Black Factor. And tonight we have an excellent subject. We're gonna talk about we're gonna recap this new movie. Y'all gonna love this. Welcome to the Black Factor. I want to welcome all my Black Factor family. Thank y'all for tuning in. My wonderful, wonderful people who always keep up with me in this show. The truly educated, the people who want to know. They want to know. All this good stuff we got out here, they want to know about it. And that's what matters. Don't forget, you guys, hit the like, the subscribe buttons, especially on my YouTube channel. In order to keep things moving, it makes it that much easier when you do the subscriptions. I do appreciate them. Thank you so much. Sandy Paris Thompson is in the building. I see you. Good evening. Thank you for checking in. So look, y'all, just know when you hit those subscribe buttons and that type of thing, you're supporting black media. That is a critical thing because we don't have enough control over our image, which leads directly into what we're going to talk about tonight. Burma Johnson, Ken Holden is in the building. My man, Kenny Mack, because that movie, man, I tell you, it was powerful. I've seen it 3 times, y'all. And I'm going to watch it again. Ask me why. Because, it's going to get, we're going to get into some details, some stuff that you may or may not have seen in the movie. Now, y'all be sure to share this, share the live, again, hit those subscribe buttons. My Also Smooth Radio family, hello. Thank you guys for checking in. We're going to have some really interesting topics and conversation tonight. And by the way, I also have a special in-studio guest, my in-house anthropologist, my mini-me, will be joining us with this conversation because she knows quite a bit about our historical origins on this continent, and we're going to talk about how that plays into this movie. So y'all get ready for that. This is the Black Factor, where the truth has no use for your feelings and facts override your feelings every time, because we don't deal with nothing but facts, y'all. Nothing but facts. Even though this particular movie is fiction, the people in it are real. Y'all gonna love this. Okay, so let's get ready and do the thing. Y'all hang tight. Let's get the intro out the way, and then here we go. All right, y'all, here we are. And my guest tonight, my mini-me, Miss Tatum. How are you this evening, my dear?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yes, you are. Because you're a child of mine, of course. No. Anyway, that was a joke, y'all. That was meant to be funny. Some days I wonder how good of a parent I've been. I don't know. They keep me going. Don't you keep me going? You still keep me going. Mm-hmm. At the age you are now. Is that what that is? Is that what you're here for? Okay. It sounds like a winner. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by saying this. Historically speaking, y'all, Western movies have always been predominantly white. I can remember growing up as a kid and we would watch Western movies and I was a John Wayne fan, and I do feel some kind of way that even my own people just didn't realize how much of a racist John Wayne really was, unfortunately. And didn't, don't watch that crap. This is somebody who does not like us or represent us well. Let me say hello to everyone that's checking in. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Just know that now we are at a time and a place where we are beginning to finally, after 400 years, take some level of license over our own images. And I'm happy that movies like this come to pass. Now, we've had a couple of mainly black cowboy movies come out in the last probably 20 or 30 years. I think one of those was Posse, and then we had Django. And then, of course, we know Quentin Tarantino does some questionable things in his dialogue. Of course, he likes to use the N-word freely, in places that it oftentimes does not even need to be used. And so we have our own reservations about that. But this movie, y'all, The Harder They Fall, there are so many subtle references and hints and things in this movie, and I want to talk about those. metaphors and just different things that went on throughout the whole movie that unless you were paying attention, you may not have caught them. Now let me stop. Pat Clay bucking the preacher. I remember that. I did enjoy that one. That was way back. Woo. Let me right here. This is where I put the I'm gonna put the asterisk. I'm gonna put the stop sign. If you have not seen this movie and you intend to watch it and you don't want to put yourself in the knowledge realm of what takes place in the movie, this is your opportunity to click off. Under normal circumstances, I would never ask anyone to remove themselves from my show. However, tonight we are going to talk in detail about areas of this movie. So if you, again, this is a spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. If you do not intend, if you intend to watch this movie and you don't want to know what's going to happen, get off of here right now. God, I hate saying that. Okay, anyway. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I'm making sure that Also Smooth Radio family that's tuned in on the simulcast, if you don't want to know the details of this movie, sign off now. All right.
Or just come back later.
No, they don't need to come back later because
after they watch it,
we're gonna get in depth. Yeah, come back and watch this show after
it'll be on YouTube.
You watch the movie because it is available on YouTube. We are streaming live to YouTube and Facebook as we speak, and it is available for your consumption at a later time. So, with that said, I want to get into some of the nuances and the subtleties in the movie, because there are many. There are a lot of things that went on. I'm a little confused here. I got paper everywhere. I don't know what part of what I'm looking at, but because there's so much stuff, y'all. I got to make sure we cover everything. With the help of my wonderful co-host, my Black Factor co-host over here, we're going to talk about, you guys. We're going to talk about some of these characters. If you have been a long time Black Factor member, you'll know that we have already discussed two of these characters in previous shows. One of them being Bill Pickett. We spoke about Bill Pickett, we spoke about Bass Reeves, and we spoke about Cathay Williams. And I bet you're thinking, who the hell is Cathay Williams? Oh, I'm getting ready to tell you. I'm going to drop it on you. I'm ready to drop the bombs on you and let you know what's happening, okay? So, let me start by saying, in the very beginning, well, not in the very beginning, but the opening scene of this movie I thought was very compelling because you didn't quite know what was going on. You had a big old guy. You didn't know what color he was. You didn't know, he's just a big menacing figure who knocks at the door of a family at dinner time. And as they're about to sit down to dinner and say the grace, a knock on the door comes and a big black guy. Actually, you couldn't even tell he was black coming through the door. And the guy who grabbed the son, white guy with a scorpion on his hand. And the next thing you know, this guy walks in. Now, this guy has two great big 45 pistols plated in gold, and I'm thinking, ooh, those are nice. But see, I really got a problem with stuff like that, and I'm going to explain why later. And it's some up-to-date stuff. Anyway, so next thing you know, this guy's sitting at the table, and you're thinking, what a cruel individual. He's pointing the gun at the boy. He's pointing the gun at the mother. And then the man says, well, listen, this is between you and I. And seemingly he's the only one in the room that seems to know what's going on. And he says, this is between you and I. Let's go outside and talk about it and work it out. Don't hurt my family. And he goes, the man doesn't say anything. And next thing you know, he shoots the wife dead on the floor. The little boy is screaming. And you're thinking next he's going to kill the little boy, but he doesn't. He kills the father. And then he takes a razor and he defaces the boy's face. And that scene ends. And we go, oh, man. But we don't really know what's happening here. We don't even know if he killed the boy or not because he used a razor and we don't know what he did to him. Not yet. So the next scene, we have a guy that's kind of look like a rough and tumble kind of cowboy riding down to do his thing. Now, I said cowboy. Here's the thing about that. Doggone it, I left that sheet in there, didn't I? Here's the thing about the term cowboy. Now, we hear that term and we use it loosely because when we think about the movies that we used to see back in the day, they were called cowboy movies. They were westerns. They were cowboy movies, right? Well, to start out, I want to give this little bit of a history. Fact, little reference. The term cowboy was originally written cowboy, like not as one word, but as two words. And there's a reason for that. Now, the English word cowboy was supposedly derived from vaquero, which is a Spanish word for an individual who managed cattle while mounted on horseback. Vaquero was derived from vaca, meaning cow, which came from the Latin word vaca. By 1849, cowboy had developed its modern sense as an adult cattle handler of American West. Now, I got that reference, and I saw that reference on multiple places, but here's what they don't want to tell you. By 1849, which was quite far into the livestock history of the United States, you have to remember, and also let's not forget that during a time prior to that, most of what we know as the Western United States was actually Mexico. Now, they say that this is a Spanish term. However, the term was actually first used by an author in the early 18th century to refer to a boy who looked after cows. But here's what we have to remember. During that time, the term boy was attributed to male slaves. They were called boy. The part that they don't want you to, or they don't want to reference, or they, I guess, try to make politically correct, is the part that white cowboys during that time were actually called cow hands, not cowboys. A cow hand, being somebody who was a hand on a ranch, was what the term they used for white cattlemen. Cowboy was reserved for black males who operated on a ranch as cow. Same thing, cow hands, and oftentimes more skilled than the so-called other cow hands. Now, that was during the time, plantation era, of course, and many plantations did handle cattle, horses, and that sort of thing. So moving forward, right? What I want to do is, and I'm trying to decide, Tatum, you can jump in here at any time and help us with this, because I know now let's also, and this is where Tatum's area of expertise comes in. The characters in this movie, we find out through our historical knowledge, because we got to remember that the movie itself, the storyline, is fictional. However, all of the characters were real people. They actually lived. They actually were real live individuals. The movie itself is to me phenomenal. I think it's going to actually be worthy of some awards coming up. It's filled with metaphors, historic points of reference, and subtle parallels to the present, actually. And I think it's a hell of a thing, the way they pulled it off. The dialogue is direct, it's definitive, and even deadly. It's one of the things I liked about it. They were so, as a matter of fact. Did you like that part, Tatum? Did you like how, how you see some movies and these guys go back and forth having these conversations, and it's a whole bunch of posturing and all that. They didn't posture, they just shot.
They were people of few words, which I think for the time, if you had to put it in context, makes sense, because you're living a very hard life. The United States' Western environment is not very forgiving. If you were out there without modern conveniences, I could definitely see how, you just, I don't know. It creates a more rough and tumble
Well,
attitude.
I'm going to say this though. Now, there are people out here who I've actually heard people say they had a problem with the story. They called it corny even. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say,
why?
well, they people don't really give you good reasons for stuff like
I mean,
that.
to interrupt that with your point, but I'm just like,
well, no, you what I mean, but that's the same reaction that I had. Like, okay, why? And then at the same time, we have to remember that they already don't make many black movies. Well, they're making more now, thankfully. But they already don't make many movies.
They're still pretty bad. I have to say, these last few years have been really
well, I mean, we
terrible.
had COVID. If you think about it, when we're dealing with COVID,
we won't even blame COVID. I'm going to say I wouldn't blame COVID.
We've been locked down. People haven't had the freedoms, I think, to use their creativity on the screen and do that sort of thing. I mean, that's just my thought.
Don't give them a pass.
Huh?
I said, don't give them a pass.
They don't get a pass. Okay, yeah, okay. I got you. But we need to support more black movies, especially because this particular movie is and has been produced and created by just a phenomenal group of black folks, from front to back. I mean, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Now, traditionally in Hollywood westerns, the majority of Western movies neglect the black characters, and black people, Chinese people, Mexicans,
all the
women, people of color. You're right. All the indigenous are always shown as subservient, or
if they show them at all.
Now that part. It was directed by Jamie Samuel and written by Samuel and Boaz Yankin. Now, this particular director, the way they went about this was brilliant. They dropped gems all through this movie.
And he's British. I don't know if you knew that.
Is he? No, I didn't know that.
He's British.
Really?
So I was reading up. So he was saying, like, he, growing up in London, or I'm not going to say London, but let's just say the UK, and he was like, yeah, I love cowboy films, but none of them showed, black people. And then he's like, he thought something wasn't right. And I guess he started, like, looking into it. And, of course, he's like, oh, wait, like, there's all of these real life people that existed.
That's amazing.
And by him being British, too, I'm sure that was, like, a shock to him. Like, oh, man, like.
Right, because our history doesn't get told unless we tell it. Nobody else is going to tell it. So the producers were James Lasseter, Lawrence Bender, and Jamie Samuels, and none other than Sean Carter. Now, for those of you who don't know who Sean Carter is, that is Jay-Z. Yeah, my man had his hand all up in that. Now, the cast, Zazie Beetz, Delroy Lindo, Lakeith Stanfield, Daniel Deadwyler, Edie I can't even pronounce that one, Gathegi, R.J. Kyler, Damon Wayans Jr., Dion Cole, Regina King, and Idris Elba. That is a hell of a cast. I was actually shocked when I started watching the movie and I saw that many prominent actors who I know were going to put on a performance, man. It was out of this world. I mean, that was amazing. Well, the basic plot of the movie is really one of revenge. I mean, it's about all good Westerners. Right. All good Westerns are about revenge. Exactly. So you have Nat Love, who was played by Jonathan Majors. And he finds out that Rufus Buck, who is Idris Elba, is about to be released from prison. So he gets his gang to track him down to get revenge. And, of course, that is the Rufus Buck gang, which was actually a gang. Matter of fact, let me see. Let me see if I got this picture up here. I hate it when I don't have my stuff.
Oh, no.
Hey, it happens. We have those technicals when we're doing this kind of thing. Little stuff happens. Yes. But it's okay because we get it together. We're gonna make it. We'll pull it together right quick.
So while you're looking for that photo, we should mention that the Rufus Buck gang was mostly made up of Creek indigenous people.
That part. Keep going.
And so-called. I'm not gonna refer to them as what were formerly known as Negroes.
Well, just say black people. We don't have to.
But I don't like the black people term, and I don't like African American.
I don't know. I don't use African American.
It's my own personal issues. This has nothing, but y'all know what I mean.
Right. Yes. So let's get more into that. Now, each one of these characters being black, all of them, And after I did their biographies, I checked on each one of them. All of them have indigenous bloodlines, and most of them dealt with. Now, the funny part is a couple of them actually had to deal with fighting Native Americans, and a couple of them, in fact, were actually military, Buffalo Soldiers, of all things.
Which, that's a whole thing we could get into. That's like a whole rabbit hole, actually.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. And here's the other thing that I find really interesting about this: the women's stories in this thing. The women have their stories are almost, if not more, interesting than some of the men's. It's crazy. Now I'm gonna start. Let me start with this guy, Cherokee Bill. His real name was Crawford Goldsby, also known as Gorilla. A 19th century American born in San Angelo, Texas on February 8th, 1876. He was the son of George Goolsby, a sergeant in the 10th Cavalry, which is the Buffalo Soldiers, and his mother Ellen was a Cherokee with white and African American blood. So that right there was one. But now, Cherokee Bill and Bill Cook recruited a gang of like-minded youngsters, black men with Indian blood, all of them.
What a coincidence.
And that a coincidence. They began a small peddling whiskey and stealing horses, then moved on to robbery, going on a wild rampage of terror. Responsible for the murders of 8 men, as he and his gang terrorized the Indian Territory for over 2 years, he was only 20 years old on March 17th of 1896 when the hanging sentence for his crimes was carried out.
People started so early back then.
Didn't they? He was 20 years old. Dude had done it all. He had killed literally 8 people by 20, and they hung him at 20. 20 in a month. It was reported that when they asked if he had any last words, he muttered, "I didn't come to talk, I came to hang." He died swinging from the end of a rope at the tender age of 20. Imagine that. So y'all, I think he was a straight up outlaw. He didn't waste no time doing his thing. Now, Gertrude Smith. Now she's one of the ones. There's hardly any information on Gertrude Smith, and Gertrude Smith is the one that what they call her, Trudy. What was the other name for her? Trudy. Treacherous Trudy. That was it.
Oh, yeah, that.
Treacherous Trudy. Let's see. I got a picture of Treacherous Trudy here. Hold on.
That's a name.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of information about her.
Is this a mugshot?
Yes, and it is a mugshot. That's the only picture known to exist of Treacherous Trudy.
It's kind of funny. They kind of look like I mean, not really, but
kind of look like what?
Their face shapes are similar, like Regina King and this lady.
Yeah, they do. Actually,
it's like if Regina King had put on more weight.
That's a good likeness, right? If she had put on more weight, she actually would look like this. Gertrude Smith was a pickpocket and always worked with a lady named Dolly Mickey around the coast. She was also given 6 months in the county jail with Dolly, and with Dolly left town.
I just want to say too, back then they really didn't lock up women, so you really had to be
doing something,
to do something. I mean, granted, she's a black woman, so they probably that's fine. So
well, they don't have a lot of information about her. That's the thing. Sure, the finding stuff about her is hard. Now they say she was actually famous for being a member of the gang that helped raise funds for local people. Now the interesting thing about her character is that I think that Regina King took a lot of liberties with the character, and I think she did a fantastic job with that, by the way. She kind of ad-libbed it. I think, now I couldn't tell, but through the movie it sounded like she was rocking a Creole accent. I don't know if that's what that was or what her...
It's open to interpretation.
Yeah, so it was open to interpretation strictly because nobody really knew anything about the lady anyway. But she was known to, have her. She had a name. She was famous for something. William Pickett,
Bill Pickett.
Bill Pickett. I apologize.
Well, I was just adding in the commentary.
No, right. No. You're right though. William Bill Pickett. Let's see. This guy. Now, here's the thing about Bill Pickett, and a lot of people well, now I think he was just recently, not recently, but in recent decades, inducted into the Rodeo Hall of Fame, because this is the guy who invented rodeo sport of bulldogging. He invented bull wrestling, and he is actually the one who created the rodeo event of bull wrestling, roping. And, the funny thing about some of these guys is that when you see this movie, you think about them all as being like outlaws and that kind of thing. But the funny thing about this is that in the movie they were because it was a fictional movie, they were created as outlaws. But these people actually did a lot of very positive things. That's the amazing part. Nat Love, the famous cowboy, otherwise known as Deadwood Dick. Now the funny thing is, I can remember watching older movies, like old cowboy movies, and people actually talking about Deadwood Dick. But that was Nat Love. That was actually the main character in the movie. And he was born in 1854 in Davidson County, Tennessee, son of Sampson, slave foreman and sharecropper. And he died in 1921. He lived in L.A. all the way up to 1921.
Interesting.
Let's see. He was a former slave. His accomplishments were what made him one of the most famous heroes of the Old West during the 1870s and 1880s. More than 5,000 black cowboys took part in the legendary cattle drives up the Chisholm Trail from Texas to Montana, roping stock, leading brands, and dodging Indian bullets. Dig that. One of the things now what I really want to get into here. There is apparently some parts in the movie where, if you know how you watch the scenes of them traveling down the road when they're coming into the town, in some of those scenes, there are, how you see the names on the different saloons and the shops and all of that, they're actually named after all the producers. There's one store, the general store, is named Carter and Carter.
Oh, that's funny.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
That's just one thing. But one of the main things that I really want to get into on that tip is the train car. Now, this is it should be a pretty well-known point by now. I don't know who all knows it or has paid attention, but this right here, ladies and gentlemen, pay very close attention to that. That says C.A. Bozeman. That is the train line. And for those of you who are not familiar with who Bozeman is, that is a tribute to Chadwick Aaron Boseman. So Chadwick Boseman has been recognized in this movie and given his shout out for being the great actor that he was. And
it's a shame he couldn't be in it.
He would have been great in this movie. He would have. So that kudos to them for dropping that gem in there. But now, just as an example, when we start talking about the different metaphors, I'm gonna just skip ahead. I wanted to talk about all these different people, and I'm gonna talk about one of them in particular, because there's some more to her story that I'm very interested in. Well, I've already studied it, but there's a part where you look at how the movie came together, and you look at the reasoning behind everything that took place, and there is a lot of it. For example, we know that Nat Love was going after Rufus Buck for killing his parents. You kind of got that idea, because you realize when they finally show you his head and you see this cross cut into the middle of his forehead, you realize who he was. He was the young boy that was in the house. But you still don't really have any idea why this took place. In the midst of that, you realize that when you find out, because you really want to hate the Rufus Buck gang, because they seem ruthless. They hijacked the train to get him out, to break him out of jail. They kill anybody in their way. But the thing about it was, you realize that these guys, you think in your mind they're terrible, but then you realize that there's a part in the movie where they're actually doing what they're doing to try and save their town. And their town is in jeopardy of what we refer to today as gentrification. What part of this move? I mean, it's just amazing how you can tie those two things together. You really get to a point where you say to yourself, like, wow, they are showing us that this town has the potential to be lost and to be taken away because of people who want to come in, spend money, spread money, and do all these different things and basically take the town away from the people who already live there. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's like it's a direct correlation to what we're witnessing or what we have witnessed over the last probably 10, 15 years right here in America. And it's like, well, that was in America too, but it's like, okay, there's a metaphor. There's a direct, like, this is what's happening now. And then you start to realize, and you don't think about this until toward the end of the movie, when the plot gets to a point where the twist comes in. Now, I'm going to get to that. But before I do, I want to talk about a young lady by the name of Cathay Williams. Why do I want to talk about Cathay Williams? Well, Cathay Williams is actually the character in the movie that called herself Cuffee. Now, for those of you who have been on the Black Factor before, when we did the show about Cathay Williams, if you remember, she was the first woman ever to be inducted into the United States military. The first black woman. She was the first black woman to ever be inducted.
She was the first woman ever
as a Buffalo soldier
to serve in the army at all.
Right.
Ever. At the time. Anyway.
Well, I want to say there may have been one other one, and I don't remember because when I did my homework on that one, it was anyway.
Oh,
Cathay Williams. But now check this out. She enlisted into the military as a man, which is the reason why when the scene came where Bill Pickett and where they were standing there, and Nat Love came to him and said, "Hey, I need you to put this on." And she got ready and she had to put on a dress, which she felt completely awkward in. She didn't want to put it on. But what was hilarious to me was Bill Pickett's reaction when he goes, "Oh man, I thought I was falling in love with a boy." And amazingly, she was, exposed as a girl at that time, much like she was exposed in her tenure in the military. Now, she was born in September of 1844, Virgo, hey, in Independence, Missouri, as a slave, by the way. Now, her father was a free man, and her mother was a slave. She, let's see. She was actually, here's the funny part. She was captured as contraband by the Union Army and was held for many years in that position. November 15th, 1866, she enlisted in the U.S. Regular Army in St. Louis, Missouri for a 3-year hitch as a man under the name William Cathay. In other words, she took her name and reversed it. Instead of being Cathay Williams, she became William Cathay. And she lived in that position for roughly 2 years without being caught. So at that time, they only used the basic medical exam to get her through. So it got her through, her medical exam, so she didn't have to go through a bunch of stuff. And the only people who knew about her were her cousin and a friend, both of whom were in the same regiment, both males. Let's see. She was said to be one of the tallest privates in her company at 5'9". So, of course, at her height, nobody was going to question her. And at that time, I guess that was considered to be tall. So
it's pretty funny.
She did this for 2 years, roughly. She had also been in a hospital facility more than once and still managed to conceal her identity. It is said that she had lots of health problems from all of this. They found out when she contracted smallpox. The doctor at Fort Byer caught on, and he reported her to the fort commander. She was discharged with disability honorably on October 14th of 1868 at the age of 24. And see, again, the time you hear all these stories and you think to yourself, man, but you realize these people were young. They were kids. They literally were doing stuff at this age that people hadn't done by the time they were 40 now. She went on to work as a cook. And she moved to Pueblo, Colorado. And she opened a business and got married. And everything went bad when her husband stole her money and a team of horses. She had him arrested for stealing livestock. And that, of course, is a hanging offense, but they never did say what happened to him. So, more than likely, he went to the end of a rope. Let's see. She moved to Trinidad, Colorado, where she became a seamstress.
Trinidad.
And this is where the story, this is when her story first started to come out. A reporter from St. Louis heard about her, and he wanted to interview her, so he did. And that's when people found out about her situation, which I think was pretty cool. But now, here's the messed up part. She had served in the military and honorably discharged, but she was denied her pension for medical disability, and because she had diabetes, and she lost the toes on one of her feet and suffered from deafness. And they said she had no grounds for disability, and her enlistment was illegal, so they didn't give her anything. So she had to fend for herself, and she ended up dying around 1893. It's not known exactly, but it was shortly after her being denied for that medical assistance or her disability from the military, because she did serve. And of course, again, obviously she was a good soldier. They honorably discharged her, but that's how she got kicked to the curb. So, in the movie, as the plot thickens, she moved forward. The whole show moving forward. We got to the point where there was this ongoing battle over Stagecoach Mary. Now, I heard people pushing back on the Stagecoach Mary situation. And they were pushing back because they felt like Stagecoach Mary was depicted inaccurately. They used, and I actually heard somebody say, it's so unfortunate. I heard somebody say, why did they use that light-skinned woman? Well, I'm going to say this for the people who have color-stricken issues. Most of the people in this movie were dark. However, in this particular case, and I think this goes back to, and Tatum, help me out if this is where we get into the scenario where we start talking about the different actors that are used to portray people in these movies that are, of course, on many occasions now foreign. And even in this particular case, when we start talking about colorism, and we, like, for example, when we looked at the Nina Simone movie that had come out some time ago, and people were up in arms about the character the person used to depict Nina Simone, and we all know how she felt about colorism and how she had been treated. And I personally believe she would have flipped out if she'd have seen who they used as her character. Do you have anything to say about that?
I don't know. It's a bit of a pickle because on the one, I've seen the girls online. Well, I remember back when they announced that Zazie Beetz, and she's not light skinned, she's biracial, just FYI.
But if you look at this photo, and you see the difference between the actual Stagecoach Mary, and the Zazie Beetz, you kind of,
So I do understand, because everyone's like, so this is the problem that I've heard, at least from the women around my age and younger. They're like, okay, they always do this in movies. They let, like, dark-skinned men, exist, and then they'll have, like, homely, darker women, and then, like, some light-skinned or biracial actress, which these days they don't even use light-skinned people. So light-skinned Black American people are, like, an afterthought now. It's like, it's always going to be biracial, usually cast. Like, it is what amazing. It is, so they will cast in the biracial, and everyone's like, well, how dare they? They always have, like, the love interest is playing this, like, light-skinned woman, and the rest of the cast is Black, which I understand, and then they're like, well, this is whitewashing by, portraying this woman as Stagecoach Mary. I feel like the one thing, it's like, no one in this movie looks like the people they were cast at. I definitely think it's the usual.
Well, I don't think they're that far off.
I mean, it's very arbitrary. Now, maybe they could have reversed, what's her name? Lord, she was in Underground, the really pretty, like, dark-skinned lady with the, like, hazel eyes. They had her play, like, Nat Love's mom in the opening scene. Like, maybe if they had reversed it, like, people would have been a little less upset.
Maybe.
But, I mean, Stagecoach Mary, she, you know, R.I.P. to her, she's not a very... She seemed like she's a rough and tumble woman, you know?
She was very rough
and she seemed older in that picture as well.
Right.
So... You know, for the purposes of this movie, I don't know. I mean, they could have cast a young, skinny, dark-skinned woman, but I personally think there is an agenda against young, attractive, dark-skinned actresses. That's just me.
Right.
If they're women, because they'll let the men make it, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
I'm gonna tell you, Stagecoach Mary got a hell of a story though.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's important that they brought the character in. Like, I'm kind of, like, I see the people's perspective being mad over the, like, colorism thing, but then I'm like, also, well, okay, fine, because, like, I think her story is important for some people to learn about, to know about her, and, you know, maybe this will inspire some folks to go look her up.
Well, I'm gonna drop some gems about Stagecoach Mary right now. She was born in 1832, around 1832, because, you know, they didn't keep records on black folks being born at that time.
Right.
She died in 1914, also known as Stagecoach Mary or Black Mary. Her name was Mary Fields. Fields was born into slavery in Hickman County, Tennessee around 1832. The man she worked for after slavery sent her and his late wife's 5 children to live with his sister, Mother Mary Amadeus, in Toledo, Ohio, where she was Mother Superior of Ursuline Convent in 1884.
Interesting.
So in other words, she was in the church now, right?
She was a nun?
She was Mother Superior.
That's
Mother
crazy.
Amadeus was sent to Montana Territory to establish a school for Native American girls at St. Peter's Mission, west of Cascade. Learning that Amadeus was stricken with pneumonia, Fields hurried to Montana to nurse her back to health. Amadeus recovered, and Fields stayed at St. Peter's, relegated multiple charges regarded as men's work at the time, such as maintenance, repairs, fetching supplies, laundry, gardening, hauling freight, growing vegetables, tending to chickens, and repairing buildings, and eventually became the forewoman the Native Americans called Fields White Crow. They called her White Crow. So the Native Americans actually gave her a name because she acts like a white person but has black skin.
Oh, Lord. Well,
that's loaded.
Uh-oh.
Life in a nunnery was placid, but Fields' hardy temperament and habitual profanity made the religious community uncomfortable. In 1894, after several complaints and an incident with a disgruntled male subordinate that involved gunplay, the bishop barred her from the convent, and Fields moved to Cascade, where she opened a tavern. So she went from the convent to a tavern.
Well, you know.
That's a switch. Pat Clay says, I will explain why it's problematic. There's a long-standing pattern in this country of hiring light-skinned, long-haired, ethnically ambiguous women to depict feminine, sexually attractive female characters, and dark-skinned men to depict strong, masculine, sexually attractive male characters. It gets old.
Yeah, nailed it. Like, that's it right there.
Nailed it.
That's it. Thank you, Pat, for that.
Let's see. So she opened the tavern, but warned due to allowing the cash poor to dine free. It closed due to bankruptcy about 10 months later. So she was feeding people. You remember there was a reference to that in the movie, actually. One of the guys in the movie mentioned that she had taken care of him and made sure that he ate all the time. I don't remember. I'm going to watch it again, y'all.
I like those subtle references, though.
Right,
to, like, the people's, like, actual,
right,
like, who they actually were.
Because remember in the movie where she said that she owned a bunch of taverns? So rather than her be a one tavern owner that crashed in 10 months, they had her as a multiple tavern owner, entrepreneur.
Like a tavern mogul.
Right. She was a tavern mogul in the movie. So there was a
she
reference.
Had a monopoly
right.
of the tavern.
Exactly. So she was trying to buy another one. She came to town to get a...
Also, can we just talk about this right quick? I saw, like, this funny thing, and they were saying, like, how she, Mary's character thought that she had, like, a really nice saloon, and then she goes into, like, Trudy and Rufus Buck's place, and so
right,
someone said they said Mary was running Magic City when she thought she was dang it, what was the reference? I don't know. It was funny though, like, her place wasn't as upscale as she thought it was in comparison to Trudy and the Rufus Buck Gang's saloon. It was all nice and classy, in there.
So apparently, let's see, by 1895, at 60 years old. Now here's what makes her story even more interesting. At 60 years old, she secured a job as a star route carrier, which used the stagecoach to deliver mail in the unforgiving weather and rocky terrain of Montana with the help of nearby Ursuline nuns. So she used the nuns from the convent she was working at as mail carriers for her business because she was an entrepreneur, y'all. They relied on Mary for help at their mission. So she was still going back to the mission in the convent and helping out, even though she had been barred by the priest. But now, she was not an employee of the United States Post Office Department, which did not hire or employ mail carriers for star routes, but rather awarded star route contracts to persons who proposed the lowest qualified bids and who, in accordance with the department's application process, posted bonds and sureties to substantiate their ability to finance the route. Once a contract was awarded, the contractor could then drive the route themselves, sublet the route, or hire an experienced driver. Some individuals obtained multiple star route contracts and conducted the operations as a business. So she was an entrepreneur through and through. So even though her tavern business may have fallen apart, she then became a mail carrier of sorts. I wouldn't even go that far. I would give her more accolade than just calling her a mail carrier. I would say she was like the Amazon of the day. Something like that. FedEx. This made her the first African American woman to work for the U.S. Postal Service. Dig that. So y'all got it here first. She was the first black woman to work for the United States Postal Service. True to her fearless demeanor, she carried multiple firearms, most notably a .38 Smith & Wesson under her apron, to protect herself and the mail from wolves, thieves, and bandits, driving the route with horses and a mule named Moses. She never missed a day, and her reliability earned her the nickname Stagecoach Mary. So I said all of that to give you the reference to which we referred to her in the movie, which is Stagecoach Mary. The reason they call her Stagecoach Mary was because she used the stagecoach to deliver the mail. If the snow was too deep for her horses, Fields delivered the mail on snowshoes, carrying the sacks on her shoulders.
Oh, no.
Yes. Now, y'all talk about y'all got problems. You don't know what problems are.
I snowshoed with no sacks, and I'm just going to tell you right now to lay down in the snow, and I'm like, that'll be the end of that.
Yeah, you that's right. You spent last winter up in Wisconsin, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, you was in snowshoe country.
Snowshoeing is nothing to play with. Like, it's difficult with nothing. I only cured myself.
So doing that, and you giving now, I got somebody see y'all like that.
In Montana, so it snows way more in Montana than it does in Wisconsin.
So you have experience on snowshoes, and could you imagine carrying sacks of mail doing
Listen, like I said, the mail wouldn't have gotten delivered. I'm going back inside. Good luck.
You said good luck getting your mail.
I'm going to the tavern.
Okay, so Mary Fields died in 1914 at Columbus Hospital in Great Falls, and her funeral was one of the largest the town had ever seen. She was buried outside Cascade.
So she was loved.
Yes, that's a good thing. Now, one of the other references in the movie that I thought was very interesting, which was on the train, and one of the guys on the train kind of got out of pocket with which was the
Cherokee Bill.
Cherokee Bill got out of pocket with Cherokee Bill, and Cherokee Bill said, "Don't Dred Scott me," which I love that reference because it is a historical reference to the Dred Scott decision that made it the separate but equal garbage and stuff that took place. And for those of you who don't know what the Dred Scott case is, because I know some of you are up on your history and others are not. The Dred Scott case, also known as Dred Scott versus Sanford, was a decade-long fight for freedom by black enslaved man named Dred Scott. The case persisted through several courts and ultimately reached the U.S. Supreme Court, whose decision incensed abolitionists, gave momentum to the anti-slavery movement, and served as a stepping stone to the Civil War. Just for reference, you guys. So, moving forward, there's another point, and I think we're gonna close with this. We're not gonna go too far, but I'm gonna bring this up, and I think you and I had a little slight disagreement about this, Miss Youngster there. Mm-hmm. There was a point in the movie where we found out at the very end. This is where the plot twist comes in. At the very end of the movie, we find out that Nat Love and Rufus Buck are actually brothers. We find out that this guy killed his father because of what he had done to his mother. And in order to serve an incredible retribution, he then let his brother go through what he had gone through and become the outlaw criminal killer that he was. Mm-hmm. And in fact, he then told him, you are even going to surpass me. And he had a notorious reputation. Everybody was afraid of Rufus Buck. But he said, you're going to even surpass me because now you're going to do what I couldn't do, and you're going to kill your brother. Am I my brother's keeper? He literally then did kill his brother. So that made him actually more notorious than Rufus Buck himself. So he was actually, he told him he was a buck. His name was actually Nat Buck. Now, this brings me to the part that I find a little disturbing with the whole part about the man trying to save the town. They went to, and interestingly enough, when they went to the other town to steal the money, when they went to go rob the bank, it was a white town, literally. It was an all-white town. The streets were white, the sand was white, the walls, the buildings were white, the people were white, everything was white. It was white horses, everything. And they went to go steal this money, and they came back, and it was like they stole the money for the purpose of saving the black town. And because these two, after all of the killing and all of the fighting and all of the stuff that went on, could not find a happy medium to be able to maintain what could have been or would have been a generational wealth. They went from fighting one another, well, to killing one another, not killing one another, one killed the other, but it kind of is reminiscent of first the gentrification that I talked about earlier, the fact that somebody else was coming in to try and take away those lands, that property. But then you have these two who now are about to lose it all because of their anger toward one another. And it's reminiscent to me of some of the attitudes and behaviors between some of our people. And I don't even want to, I really probably shouldn't go that far, because I think everybody goes through these things. It's just that, sometimes we're a little harder on ourselves than other people. Well, I don't know about that part either. Maybe I'm doing too much. I don't know. Anyway, the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we have to look at the things that are being said in this movie. We have property issues, wealth issues.
A sellout.
Huh?
Can't forget the sellout character.
That
was selling the town.
Let's not forget the sellout character.
Who got
Let's
Rufus
not forget
arrested.
The sheriff. The guy who Rufus Buck came back to town, beat the hell out of, who was trying to sell the town out from under them. Yes. Mm-hmm. I forgot about him.
He was
Then we have the sellout. Then we have the guy that wants to give it all away to line his own pockets in a personal manner.
I think another thing too, like where Trudy said, or I don't know if it was like Trudy and Rufus talking, and they were saying like, this town could be like basically an oasis for their people, for black people in the U.S. And the West. There were a lot of Western towns like that actually, so that's like a cool thing too. Like a lot of that's like not known. Like sidebar, like since I had to live in Colorado for a while, and there is a Black Western and Cowboy museum in Denver, and I've had people say to me like, "Oh, there are black people in Colorado," and I'm like, there were black people out there before before things got messed up after the Civil War for them, but like there've always been, strong.
One
black
of the
presence.
things that struck me, having moved to Texas to be in the oil fields and do the work down here, working in these oil fields, I've been all over Texas. I've been in little towns and places that people didn't even know existed. And I will tell you this much. My mouth about fell open every time I'd hit one of these little small, weird, I'm talking about in the back of middle of nowhere towns, and it was black folks. And I ain't talking about just a few. I'm talking about black folks. That goes, and that's when I had to start doing my homework and really figuring out like what was what. And then you start to realize that if they have historically depicted all of these characters that we're talking about right now as white in Western movies throughout the history of Hollywood, you start to ask yourself, how much more are we missing? How much more is it that we don't know about? Who's misconstruing the history, and why? Well, we know why.
There's so much like Western Black history. 'Cause I had to do like a project for school, so I had to start looking into it. But yeah, like I think was it Nacogdoches, Texas? And this is like Bryan.
Yeah, I've been to
like
both.
They're two.
Yep.
I want to say
Bryan
Nacogdoches.
especially. There's a lot of black folks in Bryan.
There's some town south of Dallas that's all black and has been for a really long time. They're having a problem with water right now. Don't know the name. It's so many towns, but those are just like 3 that I can think of. But I had to interview a man from one of those towns, and he started to go back and do like preservation history, and all these Texas, like going to find the cemeteries and stuff, because there's a bunch of cemeteries in San Antonio actually that were black settlements, and they're now like in the way of the development that's coming up here, and so they have to go through them and try to find the family or like block them off. But because you don't think of San Antonio as being a black town, but it once had
and it actually was. San Antonio has such a rich black history. It's crazy.
Yes.
As a matter of fact,
it's completely different than like other places, because this was a Spanish colony.
And it's also part. And a lot of people don't know that San Antonio has the largest Martin Luther King Day holiday celebration in the entire country. We got it going on right here.
Which I feel like people on the other side of the country be like, how is that possible? Like, it's not in Atlanta, and it's
now,
like no.
You would think. Now Regina also pointed out. Let's not forget about Bass Reeves. Who was the?
How did we skip the?
Yeah,
well, because we didn't go down all the characters.
Because we didn't go down all the characters.
I think that should be next week's. Guys, tune in
I
next week.
I did a show about Bass Reeves.
we're gonna go back and do another one. Like
I did. I literally pulled my notes.
I'm just saying, like all we should just go find more black cowboys. Like I think we should do features like of all these like cool Western.
I did an entire show about Bass.
Okay,
Reeves
it doesn't have to be Bass.
And the reason I did it was because we were at that time, and this is because of you, as a matter of fact, young lady, had me watching that doggone Lovecraft Country.
Oh, I was like.
And when I started watching Lovecraft Country, there are references from the Oklahoma Massacre about Bass Reeves, and in fact, he wore a mask. And what people don't know, what did I do with these doggone notes? Bass Reeves is the character that they referred to or used as the basis for the Lone Ranger. And they in fact launched the show. Where are my notes?
Wing it.
They launched the show. Just my wings ain't working. They launched the show from a radio station in Michigan, WXYZ, which is where he was actually from, I believe. Anyway, Bass Reeves was well known. In fact, he was such a well-known a lawman. He was one of many marshals. In fact, he was the only or the first black marshal this side of the Mississippi. And he literally had killed many outlaws and brought in many outlaws and was never, ever touched. In fact, he didn't die. He literally lived into the 1940s, I believe it was.
Oh, that's kind of crazy. It was a long time.
Yeah, he lived. He had been around a while. Bass Reeves was a bad dude. I don't know what I did with my notes. I had a whole sheet on him.
Well, that's one we should just do a Black Western Black Factor feature.
Show.
There's so many good books and stories out there that we could just make a whole thing of it.
That is true. But then, yeah. Riri said WXYZ honorable mention, go to Detroit. Right. That's exactly, because that's where they announced it. That's where they launched the show from, because you guys, back before there was television, everything was a radio show. And they launched that show, The Lone Ranger, as a radio show. And it was about this. And then the sad part is Hollywood then took that character and turned it into this white guy on a white horse with an Indian sidekick. Or should I say?
A bunch of nonsense.
Right.
As usual.
Who wasn't even Indian. But anyway.
I do believe he was Italian. Thus, you know what? I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole. I'm going to be quiet.
Why? Go down the rabbit hole.
Well, I was just going to say also influenced a generation of people to think of how indigenous people are supposed to be light or almost white looking, and they definitely are not. That's not how they necessarily looked. As we can see from the pictures of the cowboys featured in today's show, who were all of, half indigenous or something like that.
So yeah, there's so many stories. I'm gonna dig that show back up. Because I did it was a long,
We'll
the
put it
whole
in
show was
show
about
notes.
Bass Reeves. Huh?
We'll put it in show notes. That and the
Yeah.
Cathay Williams in the show
Cathay
notes.
Williams. Cuffee in the movie. Cathay Williams, the very first black woman to enlist in the United States Army as a Buffalo soldier. And she, in fact, served 2 years undercover as a male. And she was a female. I swear that's why I thought
wait,
the reference was so cool.
Was Bass Reeves in Regina King in The Watchmen? I don't.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Did y'all watch The Watchmen?
Wait.
Well, you mentioned Lovecraft Country, but
That was the one on HBO Watchmen and Tanner told us to watch.
yeah, Watchmen's the comic book
Okay,
one.
yeah.
With the,
Well, that's
I can't
another.
remember.
Okay, you know what? Don't get me confused because y'all had me watching them weird shows.
Wait,
and
I
was
think
getting
it
caught
might
up.
be. I know it's so many shows. I can't even remember them all at this point. So it's
Yeah,
just
you don't want to suggest all this stuff.
I know Watchmen was a good show though, and that
All right.
was Regina King. So.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, with that said, The
And
Harder They
Lovecraft
Fall,
was good.
excellent movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff in that movie that I missed because I'm gonna watch it again. I know that there's, but when you know your historical references and things of that nature, it's easier to watch something like that because the producers and directors were conscious enough to drop those gems in there for you to pay attention to. There's also reference to another movie that was done with what's the guy's name? Y'all know who I'm talking about, and I can't think his doggone name. Anyway, he was his name was used on a wall. Carter. No, that was the store. It was the reference. No. Anyway,
Wait,
y'all.
can we just talk about really quick
Yes,
how
go
the
ahead.
N-word was not used at all in this movie? And then when
Oh,
someone almost did it, they
Forgot
shot
about
him.
that part. Yeah, at the very
Trudy shot-
beginning, Trudy's character, the man got out of the train. He was mad because he was like, "That's no way to stop a train, you stupid!" And he got the end part out, and she blew his brains out. And well, what's the other character's name? He said, "Well,
Cherokee
maybe
Bill.
Cherokee Bill said, well, maybe he was gonna say nincompoop." She said, "Well, we know nincompoop," so she
Yeah,
shot
she's
him
like,
anyway.
no
She said,
words to begin
anybody,
with it.
anybody that use any word would start with the letter N gonna get shot in the head today. So that's kind of how that went. Which, hey, what I think is important is that, let's be real, there were people like this in this country at that time. There were people who didn't take that kind of crap.
Yes, which we know they like to act like. No, everyone was just like, "Oh, Master, don't."
Exactly, and that's
and
just
a
not
bunch
how
of
it
craziness.
was.
No,
There
it
were
was
people
not like
that.
that.
There were people who definitely handled their business.
Oh, we should talk about John Horse.
John Horse.
Guys, tune in next week. We're going to talk about some more Western Black history.
See, now let me show y'all something. My co-host over here, she's always telling me all of this stuff, and then I have to hunt her down, and I have to bend her arm back to make her come and be on this show with me. She got all this beautiful information, but I get her on the show, and she won't drop no gems for me.
Okay, well, we can just talk about John Horse. So, this is Texas history. So, John Horse is a Seminole Black, and he was like a chief, and he got taken out to Oklahoma, during the Trail of Tears. It might not have been the Trail of Tears because I can't remember. They moved different tribes at different times, right? The Cherokee was primarily, I think, Trail of Tears.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's not here nor there. Don't get me the line. So John Horse, he comes out to Oklahoma, and then the government and the Indian Territory folks are like, well, you're a little too dark-skinned, so we're not going to give you and your folks, like, any land, no food, nothing.
So in other words, instead of them giving him his reference as being indigenous, they
Yeah.
wanted to make him out
Oh yeah,
to be.
and so that was the thing. They used to put pencils in some of the Indians' hair and be like, "Oh no!" And see, that's how like a lot of
Wait,
like
what?
they would put pencils in their hair. If it stuck, then they couldn't get enrolled in the tribes.
Really?
Yeah. So you see, this is what some people.
Well, you have to tell us these things.
Oh, sorry. Okay, well now we're talking about it, and we'll come back.
Keep
and we'll
talking.
We'll do a whole thing.
No. Keep
Okay.
talking.
All right. So basically now they're hungry and homeless, and they're like, all right, you took us off our land in Florida. Like now we're out here in Oklahoma. Different weather, like all this stuff.
And no land.
So then the U.S. government comes to them, and there's another movie that just dropped, the Chickasaw Rancher movie. They actually reference this in that movie.
Oh, Is that the one? It's on Netflix right now.
Yeah,
I gotta watch.
It's not a great movie, but it's got some cool references in it. And actually, one of the other main characters is like a black guy. But
What's the name of that movie?
Chickasaw Rancher.
Chickasaw Rancher.
Yeah,
okay, y'all heard that. Watch Chickasaw Rancher.
Yeah, so it's and I just want to say here, the U.S. government and a lot of like popular black historians will lie and say like, black and indigenous, and we use black very arbitrarily here because black can mean all kind of things. If you really get into U.S. history, it's not necessarily African like people would have you believe. So you don't know truthfully unless you do your genealogy. But I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole. So they'll be like, okay, black and indigenous or red people didn't really intermix, like they didn't interact, they were never around each other, and like that's a lie. And then again, black arbitrary term. They're putting pencils in people's hair like, you're too dark skinned, boom, you can't get any tribal benefits. So now these people are hungry. So here comes the U.S. government. They're like, hey, help us track down the wild Indians. Help us round them up out in Texas, out in Oklahoma, out in Colorado. Help us like catch the Apache, and we'll give you houses and we will give you land. Stuff that they should have been entitled to anyway, because they were
removed from their original.
And they were indigenous, but this gets into like the colorism and the racial reclassification that's happened. Now
the racial reclassification, that's what the thing we had talked about before, where the census made the determination as to whether or not a person could be considered black or
indigenous.
Okay.
And that's like a whole weird rabbit hole because it gets into all those like one drop rules and all kind of stuff like that. So and then again, they would, they'd be like, well, one drop of black blood. But again, black was arbitrary. It could mean dark Indian, could mean African, could mean Romanian, it could mean Australian, like an Aboriginal person that they captured and sold as an African. It could be like an Indian person, like what we now, it was called Hindustan back then, but we now know them as the Indians, the people from the subcontinent Asia. So, it's just real like ratchet. So anyway, they get John Horst and his folks, and they are indigenous themselves. So, there's still a commonality to the way they track and hunt, unlike the Europeans. They also made some of these people be buffalo soldiers, so that's a whole other thing. That's the regiment a lot of them went into, the buffalo soldiers.
So they ended up actually fighting indigenous people as themselves.
Yes, they did, and they did it because the government basically strong-armed them. So after all that, of course, this branch of the Seminoles and John Horst and them, they didn't get anything for all their trouble and for helping track down all the people, and they went to Mexico. Actually, so because that was like the only place they could go after all of that. And Mexico has its own interesting like black history and a lot of history that interacts with like U.S. history.
Renee Ford makes a good point. She just said, until the U.S. comes to terms with its past, it will never prosper. Germany tells the U.S. always in speeches.
Yeah, I think we'll be seeing a lot of that coming up here soon. We all have some dark times up ahead, so everyone, not trying to breed doom and gloom. It's not a doom and gloom thing.
Actually, you know what, Tatum? I'm glad you said that because, while we're on the subject, go ahead and give us an overview of your predictions for the future, because I know, y'all, I'm lucky enough to have a child who stays on top of these types of things and gives us the heads up about a lot of stuff. And she predicted this sort of shortage that we're seeing in these markets where you can't get stuff and stuff's not on the shelves and all that.
And I've been
she told me she's been ranting about this for almost 2 years. She said it was coming and it's here. Tell us more about what you think we're looking forward to.
So in I'm not an astrologer. And let me just say that astrology is not your horoscope that you read in the newspaper or on, the cute little like tweets or memes. Like, it's not that at all. But there's different branches and types of different disciplines of astrologers. Let me say that. So some of my favorite, one of my favorites, her name is Jade. They talk about how, the U.S. is about to have a Pluto return. So now if anyone's familiar with Greek mythology, Pluto is associated with Hades.
I was just ready to say, yeah.
Yeah, and the underworld. One of my favorite mythologies, because it's just like fun and cool. So it's the underworld, it's death, it's like a death cycle. Like things are just going to keep rocking and rolling in a dark way. I don't want to say negative because it's not negative, but let them tell it. Let some of the astrologers tell it. There will be you guys can actually look this up. It's called I think Pluto is going into just look up the United States and a Pluto return, and you guys can kind of like research that stuff so you can prepare as best you feel. But they're saying, you know, the U.S. is going to have to, it's the return of when the United States was founded, like when they signed the Constitution and stuff. And it's like where there's going to be this like pull where we have to decide, are we really about the life we say we're about as Americans? And like all this dark stuff and the undercurrent, because, you know, the dark side of America is like, you know, anything is for sale. You know, they'll say, oh, this is a land of immigrants. This is not a country of immigrants. This is a country of like indentured servants, slaves, and broken poor pilgrims. You know, it was a rough, and there's a show called American Gods, and they kind of show like how they get into that, like the real story of America, like the darkness.
So in other words, what's been bubbling beneath the surface for so long
these
is
things
now going to
that
start
nobody, that they don't want to deal with, that folks don't want to talk about because like it hasn't changed. You know, like that the ground, like one of my favorite things too is like a lot of U.S. highways. Those are old indigenous trails that are built over them. You know, no one will tell you that. Like, oh, the highway we're driving on, that was a huge road that the indigenous people had cleared. I don't know if they were paved or not, but you know, like those were roads that already existed. A lot of the towns, yes, that's a great point. I see Regina says that this is a country of criminals. Yes, that's another thing. Like, and I think it's where Americans' hustle culture comes from. But that's not here nor there. So, you know, a lot of the United States cities are built outside of what were once like large and prosperous indigenous cities. You know, you don't learn anything about those cities. In Georgia history, we kind of learn. You kind of learn about them, but they don't get into like the full extent. Like
I don't think they ever will, because that would mean they would have to be honest and face the truth about.
But this is where we're going. These things are gonna start. Let them tell it. Like start coming up. You know, stuff where we're having. How shall we say?
Things they've been trying to hide.
We're dealing with that public health issue right now, though we claim to be a land of freedom, but you're strong-arming people. You know, you want to raise taxes. Okay, well, we had the Boston Tea Party, you know, back at that time when the Constitution was signed. So, you know, all of these things, America's going to have like a reckoning with itself. Let the astrologers tell it. So,
well, you know, I don't disagree with that because, and in fact,
it's supposed to start in February, y'all.
Some years ago, okay, y'all heard that it's supposed to start in February. Some years ago, I was reading that America is on borrowed time. If you look at the republics and different governmental entities that have existed over the last several hundred years, we in fact are living we're past time for this particular situation to fall.
Well, I feel like it's such an arbitrary thing to say. Like Rome lasted thousands of years, Egypt 5,000, Babylon 10,000. You know, so I mean, because the timelines they give, I feel like are sketchy at best. So, I mean, things can happen. I think with the way our politicians move and you know these different global interests that are happening right now, like there is. I feel like, and not to go down a conspiracy rabbit hole, but you know, there is an agenda to destabilize like sovereign nations, like regardless of where they are. So it's like as Americans, and this is nothing.
We just talked about that last week when we talked about finance and currency. We talked about NFTs and crypto, right. Because we talked about the gold standard that they were about that Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein were about to set on the African continent.
Yeah, that's never coming back per se. Like one of my favorite YouTubers, Erica Williams, talks about how like there will just be an asset class. I joke with my friends that we're going back into a feudal era. It's like you
better have some skills.
You have gold, skills, land, or you were able to produce something like food. And that's just period, point blank. Like, and you can run tech. Like those. That's just about where everybody's good. If you can't do any of those things, you don't know where. You just, you know, like we're going back into a Middle Ages of sorts, you know. And while it's not we don't have a lack of information, but there's a whole lot of misinformation. Like I think
far too much of that.
You see with 2020, like, you know, people will make it seem like, oh, it was all, you know, President 45 who was spreading misinformation, but it's on all sides. And like I say this as someone who has worked in the media, and you know it's all sides, like misconstruing stuff, like saying things that let people assume things that were not said, which we've seen that a lot over the last year and a half. Not going to get into that. We're not trying to get shadow banned, but you know
she tells me be careful of the words that I use on my show.
Don't listen. Skynet is watching on this man's internet, as they say, as Erica Williams says. So you know, you just everyone has to get their ducks in a row. Like, and Black Americans, I feel like specifically are going to have to reckon with, are you really American? And I think a lot of, white Americans have to reckon with this too, because it's like when you have foreign interests coming into your country, destabilizing it, you have to think about like what, a lot of people.
That's definitely happening.
And it's from a lot of different sides too. So, like there was a whole bunch of spies caught doing stuff, and that wasn't a big story last year because COVID. But again, I was working in the media. I saw the stories go to, and they would just like disappeared quietly, and that was the end of it. And that's not on a conspiracy stuff. It's like literally what I saw like in real time. And so, we're all gonna have to reckon like, what a lot of people don't feel like America has values, but like we do. We love a hustle. We love a hustler. We love an underdog story. And that's because that's how our country came to pass. And even though, like, we have a very racist past, I think for the most part we believe, like, anybody can come up, if you're willing to put in the work. Like, that's what we are about.
Tatum, Nubian Holmes, my man that's my homie right there. Out over there in Atlanta, he says he agrees with you about the length of time of those legendary regimes. However, he believes that the reason they lasted so long is because there was a much more unified base that they were built upon, and not nearly as much disparity regarding rule until toward the end when it began unraveling.
I agree with that, and that's I think that's kind of a part of this like Pluto return astrology aspect. If you want to, that's how I reference stuff, but you could reference it in other places. But it's where Americans like true blue, like you've been here since the time of the Pilgrims and the wigwams, and when it was nothing but a swamp and a bunch of acres and acres of forest from coast to coast. Like we will have to have a reckoning about like what is this really good? Like what do we want this country to be going forward? And I mean, for some of us that'll look like, all right, we getting out of here. Like good luck. Some people will be making plans to move to other countries. Some people are going to double down. Some people will double down in ignorance. Some people will double down and like, all right, like how can we build community and I think move forward? Because, as things get tighter for everyone has to like pull their belt kind of thing, You don't want your neighbors robbing you, you know what I'm saying?
And this is actually, I think, one of those times where having property is going to be beneficial. Or am I off base with that?
What having properties
about having
beneficial?
property, actual property, like land type thing.
I would say so. I mean, because in these times where folks are losing their job for all kind of weird and random reasons, like no one thought they would lose their jobs last year over a public health crisis. That's how we're gonna refer to it.
People are losing their jobs this year over a public health crisis because they refuse to follow a mandate.
Yes. Don't say the words. Don't say.
Did I say a word?
No, you did. I'm just saying.
I said a mandate.
That might even be too much.
I didn't use that other word.
That one might. But to the point, it's like you have to decide like how to make what do you need to survive and live and like set yourself up in a way where you can do it with at least amount of intervention from outside entities as possible. So yes, something like land, that's a great idea for some people, learning how to farm. Like farming, another thing that happened last year, when there's no food on the shelves, what did people do? Like a lot of folks turned to local farms. Some people I know in New York, they went back to milk delivery service, something that, hasn't existed since I've never seen milk get delivered. You only get it from the store, but some of my grandmothers in them's age, they would know when that used to be a thing. But the dairy farmers had to bring it back because there was no way to get their product to their customer. Mm-hmm. So they're like, hey, we're going to deliver it. Butcher shops back in action, Isn't
that something? Isn't that amazing? Like these are the things that we used to have and we then started taking for granted, and now they're back out of necessity.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Because globalism, like, is great in some ways, but as we've seen when this last year and a half, it had we're dealing with the dark side of globalism. When you import everything, now your shelves are empty. You don't make anything. You can't get any food because it's grown 3,000 miles away. And there's even this story I think from Montana. The butchers are thinking about creating their own processing plant because I don't know. I didn't really look into it. I don't know who owns these processing plants, but the ranchers are saying that's causing the meat prices to go up because there's something weird.
Because there's a middleman.
Yeah, and they're like, no, we might just, take it back to the way it used to be. So, I say everyone support your local farmers. Go find some, support them. If you're in the Midwest, Shout out to Wisconsin. Great place to just go over. I spent a lot of time there. The Amish are on it, boy. If something happens, like, y'all need to go take some workshops with them. Like, show me
Amish workshops.
Yeah, show us how to build a fence. I mean, they're still living, like it's back in the day. So
it's not going to affect them.
No, they will not. They will be fine. Them and the Mormons, and I think a lot of people, like, in the Western and, like, upper Midwest, because they already, like, live...
They have not spoiled themselves to these amenities and these cell phones.
They go hunting on the weekend
and all the stuff we deal with.
And they don't have service hardly, let me tell you, up there anyway. So you're not relying on your phone to do anything. It's a bunch of ex-military people, so those folks are always very prepared.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to...
Preppers, y'all. I did a show on prepping. We did a whole show where we talked about prepping and having your stuff together and ready. I may do another prep show here in the next month or so, since we're coming into what my daughter says is a terrible time. I might do another
winter
prepper
is
show.
Coming.
So, like they say on the Game of Thrones, winter is coming.
Dark
literally.
Winter.
I think we're going to do another prepper show where we talk about the absolute necessities, bug out bags, and things that you would need under adverse circumstances.
Gardening, it's if you can get let me say this. Y'all can do microgreens and mushrooms. Like...
Micrograins? What is a micrograin?
Or microgreens. They're just like little... You
said greens.
You just sprout the shoot. Or you can do sprouts because they're like super nutritious. And they're like really like low maintenance for people who really don't have room to garden. So, would recommend. You can grow them inside in the windowsill.
What's the purpose of
right.
Oh, they're just super nutritious. Like, because I mean, if anything were to happen,
and you need your nutrients.
Yeah.
Also, and for the record, so like we get into this. A lot of people get into this thing where we think we're supposed to have meat, and a lot of people don't realize that you do not need meat. You can survive off of many other things.
Well, I mean, you can, but
if you gotta survive, you don't have.
Everyone go buy a chicken. That's what you. I'm trying to convince you that we should get a chicken.
No chickens.
Right.
We got one running around the neighborhood.
We could just go like.
All right, let me put it this
road.
way: if we go ahead and move into this other space, I would consider a few chickens.
You gotta have
only
some
because I
livestock.
have a good friend down the road who actually has goats and chickens, and I've had some of the eggs from her chickens, and I was quite impressed.
They're top tier. Those fresh farm egg. I mean, again, I've been living in Wisconsin. I'm spoiled. I'm like, oh, this food tastes terrible. I want it fresh off the farm. Like, it tastes so much better.
Yeah, Nubian, that go bag thing, I definitely have those on deck, stash spots, and I'm working on a location somewhere else that.
Need some cash?
No, you don't. Well, cash is not. Now my producer over here says you're gonna need cash. Here's the thing: if we get into a situation where, like my daughter was saying, you're dealing with asset society, cash is not going to be any good.
Well, like I said, it's the Middle Ages. Think back, what was valuable in the Middle Ages? Who's got the alcohol? Who's got the food? Who's got the coffee?
Right.
Things that were, the people really do need. Who can fix stuff.
Yep.
You'll be good to go.
Well, I got the fix stuff down pat.
Right.
They call me Mr. Fix-It.
Oh,
all right.
Go to your local farmers markets, everyone. Support
well,
the local
ladies
farmers.
and gentlemen, we've gone off the rails with this show. We started out talking about one thing and we went left.
Right. She's going to tell you the local farmer markets here and there.
Okay.
Well, I feel like it's because everyone's everywhere.
It always amazes me how. Look, she got a baseball bat, y'all. She threatening me with a bat.
Uh-oh. What's it? The pineapple juice is running low. Oh, wait, plastic surgery waiting room. I looked at the label. It's produced in the Philippines. I thought everyone was getting PBLs and drinking pineapple juice. Nope, our juice is freighter in the ocean.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What?
World War Z. Well, you should have read it out loud. Anyway.
Basically,
no.
we're out of pineapple juice because
here's the
imported.
thing. Here's one of the things that I think we forget in this country. America used to be a producer. We've become a consumer. We're no longer the country that makes everything that everybody else wants. We're now the country who relies on everybody else to make everything that we want. All of our companies that are financially based or supposedly financially based in America have their products made offshore to save money, and then they store their money in other countries where they don't have to pay the tax rate.
Well, I know no one liked the last president, but he did say that, not that he did anything to fix it, but
And he's doing it.
he did. No, I agree. But I'm just saying, he did bring up the point. It's like, all right, y'all, we need to, we need to do better. And I mean, we do.
I mean, he didn't tell no lie on that part.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, you can't. One of my other favorite, a podcast I love is called Sovereign Man. And they talk about, they're like, the U.S. dollar is fine as long as everyone believes it. He was like, but after two, we, with our current president, 46, falling asleep and stuff and having, weird things going on for stumbling. It's like, if, and the last one, obviously, we know what's wrong with that one. So they're like, if the globe loses confidence, then that will potentially affect the dollar. Then we're all,
Right.
in shambles.
Well, I mean, that's already happening. That's the reason why I think a lot of people are moving back toward commodity type financing, gold, and even going into the cryptocurrency and the NFT side. I mean, that's all of this is part of that evolution.
The thing with that too, just to chime in, y'all, with the crypto, China, I think banned it, or they're about to ban.
They just I think outlawed it.
So now the problem with that, of course, it's one of the biggest economies in the globe. So if they say no, then it could, everyone we all have to keep our head on a swivel.
Even though they're one of the biggest economies, if the rest of the world doesn't go along with that ban, they could very well find themselves not being one of the biggest economies, because then nobody will deal with them business wise. You still got to remember there's a global scale to be dealt with. That's the reason why we're all on a global scale with petrodollars. That's the reason why oil is purchased with United States dollars. That is partly what keeps it propped up.
Purchased with dollars, just like they do business deals in other countries with dollars. It's that, it's just that currency. So, I mean, for us, if anything is to happen to the dollar, we can go ahead and just hang it up. I mean, so hopefully that won't happen.
Reggie Clayton asks, what is the unrealized tax that the government is about to launch? Is there a way around that for black folks as a whole?
Now, see, that's above my pay grade. I don't know. I have no
unrealized tax. Well, actually, I want to know, so I'm about to look it up right now.
What is the unrealized tax?
Let's find out. Let's see. Do you get taxed on unrealized gains? Unrealized gains are on paper only, are called unrealized gains. For example, if you bought a share for $10, it's now worth $12. You have an unrealized gain of $2. You won't pay any taxes until you sell the share.
Oh, is this that new thing they just proposed?
Apparently.
I've heard. I don't know enough about that to speak on it. But if it's gonna do what I think it's gonna be
capital
bad.
gains tax or
yeah, but on stocks, so they're gonna force you to pay the taxes for what it's worth if it gained anything.
Okay.
Instead of paying, I don't. You know what? Let me just stop because I don't even know.
Well, thing is, they're doing a lot of stuff like this right now. Just like they tried to push through the whole thing about $600 in your bank account and it has to be reported, and which I think was going to be a huge mistake. And I'm not going to lie to y'all, while I do advocate us voting, I have a very bad taste in my mouth.
You have to vote with a purpose.
Where we are.
I said that last year I was the only person y'all dragged me. I just want to say that I was dragged by everyone. I agreed with Ice Cube. y'all talked about me like a dog around here. Y'all wanted to vote and didn't want to demand nothing. And now, I mean, it's Dr. Claude Anderson warned everybody. Them videos came out before I was born. He said, y'all going to be the permanent underclass and they're going to bring in other folks to replace you. And we are here now. So, I'm just going to say everybody was like, let's just vote. Because now, I'm sorry, the Democrats and them, they come up with a boogeyman every 4 years. Now, I have only been alive to participate in about
Democrats are not the only ones that come up with a boogeyman. The boogeyman.
Well, yeah, they do. But here's my issue with black folks, because it's been the same dog and pony show for the last 60 years since they shot MLK, true. And everybody keeps falling for it. I mean, and it's the same for the Republican people. But I will often hear black Democrats be like, "Well, why are they voting against your interests?" But why are you voting against your interests? Because now they're about to pay out, other folks for stuff, and you sitting over here looking stupid. But you're like, we had to vote so-and-so out, which is fine. Obviously the last person was crazy. 45 was insane. But it's this, I feel like this.
Look what we got for our money. That's what the problem is.
Now this gets into back where I think we have to have a reckoning where, we have to accept that these people do not work for us. They work for themselves. And there's no point in pretending
Right.
that voting is about to change anything. Because again, as I call him, Massa Biden he told a bunch of those like congressional Black Caucus politicians. He's like, y'all not getting nothing. What part did you know what I'm saying? And they still were like, vote for Joe Biden. He wasn't even winning until the Black people of South Carolina like helped him out. And it was like, for what? Because he wasn't offered anything different than any other candidates. Well, so there was no reason for,
Regina Freeman just said that rock and a hard place scenario. And like Regina King in the movie said, Trudy said, that's Monday for us.
I mean, yeah, it's, this is where, I think we as a people, it's already a wrap. They'd already said, we're not about to help you. Y'all not getting nothing else. That's a shame that slavery happened, but that's too damn bad. They really are pushing that, this is a country of immigrants story. When we know this was a debtor's colony and a slave colony.
Without either, they wouldn't have nothing.
Yes, the immigrants came after everything was built, So, no shade to them because they play their part. They have their role, but as a community, we have to say to ourselves, why do we have such a low self-esteem that we feel like we shouldn't demand anything for our votes? You know what I'm saying? Like all the different communities, the Latino people got DACA because they don't even help out, from my understanding, too much of the Black immigrants with that. Like it doesn't really work for them as well. So they got DACA. They got that Asian hate bill. All these things. These folks have been in the country like 50 years. And, they cashing out, which I'm not mad at them because, America's a country, like I said, it's a country of hustlers. Like, people come here to get money. Like, they come
here
back
where they came
to
from.
Hustle. And that's the other thing. Trump's like, y'all got to stop sending money back. And folks is mad. But, it is true, a part of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is the welfare state for the globe. Like, everybody comes here. They send their poor and hungry masses here to get a come up, which is fine. I don't even have a problem with that.
Reggie Clayton says, actually, he's talking about the thing he brought up. Actually, it's money that you don't have that you will have to pay taxes on. The government says that it will affect the rich and the wealthy more than it affects the working folk. That's never the case.
Oh, you see,
I peeped the game. They want us annihilated.
After
it's
they
just another way to attack the pocketbook.
What was that GameStop stock stuff? They said we're gonna fix y'all.
They
said we gotta answer y'all out here balling out on Bitcoin and GameStop stocks.
Yeah.
When they shorted the market, all the people on Reddit, they were like, no.
All right, it's time for me to go.
Okay.
Y'all starting to depress me. I gotta look.
There's no reason to be depressed. We need to pick better candidates. Start a garden.
Let me say this.
Be self-sufficient.
Let me say this to the public and to the world. I want y'all to understand something. There are a couple of things that I don't take for granted that I love dearly. One of them is a good hot shower. Do y'all understand how much that means to me? I need y'all to understand how much that means to me. To be able to get up when I feel like it, turn on my shower, and clean myself in a warm bath of water. That is the most incredible thing in the world to me. And the only thing closer to that is when I lay in my big, soft, comfortable ass bed and I can roll over and not even see my wife till I roll over 3 or 4 more times, and it just hugs my body. Do y'all understand that if we go into a situation where things get crazy out here, those two things can be taken away from you? I want you to understand, learn to appreciate those little things, just how much they really can mean to somebody. And I know that sounds maybe crazy as hell, but I'm telling y'all, I fear the day when I can't have either one of those things. That is no joke. Not because of my own devices, but because of where we are potentially headed in this country.
I think no American is ready to give up the hot shower. So, it's time to, like I said, with that reckoning and all, it's like we all have to do our part to try to, try to keep the wheels on. So.
Pat Clay says, as long as fragile whites run this country, even property ownership will not secure the agency we need. Eminent domain overrides land title. Yes, it does, and I'm a witness to it. There's a black family embroiled in a lawsuit today to have their land returned from the 1960s. Hey, Pat, listen, let me tell you, I did a show on here, and I talked about something similar. I was into that whole thing. My family literally had a few thousand acres in Tennessee. Eminent domain, right now, we still have a very small portion of that land. Eminent domain, part of it is now a bird sanctuary. The other part of it, I-40 runs right through the middle of. And so I land on each side of I-40 in Tennessee. So yes, you're absolutely correct. We're not.
It's a start.
Nothing is safe or sacred.
But it's better than, I look at it too. It's like, a lot of, which we get into debates about this here, but every time I go to Chicago and I'm just like, wow, everybody's just down horrible. Everybody looks gray. Folks got like records, kids everywhere that nobody really want to raise. Like, it's just a bunch of mess going on. Like fried food cooked in like, vegetable oil, which mind you guys, like causes cell death. I don't know if anybody knew that, and we have the most fried food restaurants on the south side.
You can't even get green vegetables on the south side.
No, you can't. Even the vegan restaurant is full of soy over there. So, it's a point of contention for me when I am home. But let me say that, like, starting somewhere helps. Like, not controlling any wealth or anything. Like, you have no interest in the game. So, like, is land the end-all, be-all? Absolutely not. But it's like, if you don't participate in a society, then you have no say, which is, I think, is what we're seeing happen to black people now. Everybody left the South, and which for a good reason, nothing wrong with that. Went up north, got high blood pressure, and a bunch of, like, baby mamas and baby daddies, and, like, prison records.
On that note, Renee Ford, do you know, this is right up your alley, do you notice many Americans are becoming expats? My co-worker is moving to Mexico in 2 years. Former co-workers moved to Costa Rica.
Yes, I had some buddies just dip out. Yeah, I think a lot of them, it's not new, but I think we're going to see a lot more Americans dipping out. I mean, because if you see the writing on the wall, it's no telling how it's going to go, but, a lot of people leave a bad situation early instead of waiting to sit around and
wait for it to fall apart.
Yeah, like if they think of the people that like left Germany before Hitler like really got wild. They're like, let me get on up out. They saw he started talking a little bit crazy. Like, you know what? We could go ahead and get out. And like those people were already out
before he went nuts.
Everybody who stayed behind was locked up in the ghetto, like, and sent off to the concentration camp. And I mean that's a very extreme example, but there were people that saw the writing
on the wall,
and they're like, let me get out of here. Before it gets a little too sketchy.
And that's, and to be honest, I mean, I personally believe that under certain circumstances, we are not that far from something like that.
I mean, any country, it could happen. Like, I think another thing with 2020 is, like, it could definitely happen to your country, and it could happen to you. Like, I don't think if anyone's paying attention, it's like, oh, nothing is too far off.
I think that's part of America's problem. I mean, Americans in general, we have this false sense of security of believing that the things that happen in these other countries can't happen here.
Well,
and I think that's a ridiculous notion.
It's been so long since like a war has been fought here. Like all the people that would have lived. Oh no, we have.
Not as America. We've only had the Civil
like the
War
French
as
and
America.
Indian War. We were fighting with Spain and Mexico. But it doesn't. I'm just saying, like the people that stayed here, their family's still here. But it's like you don't have anyone to pass down the tales of like, oh, how bad the Revolutionary War was, or how bad the Civil War was, or how bad the War of 1812 was, or how many people died. I mean, because the Civil War was bad. Like, it really was bad. A lot of people died in the Civil War. Or the Indian uprisings that happened, because that, that was much wilder than they get into. Like, them people were not just, like, going quietly. Did some of the tribes? Yes, but a lot of them were fighting tooth and nail, to keep their land, keep their way of life, and they died doing it or were put into slavery. So, it's a lot of blood on this land. And I think we're just removed from it because nothing has happened here in a long time. We haven't had, we get like some school shooters. Like that's the craziest thing.
Well, if we get Nubian Homestead, the Indians were massacred. It wasn't a war. Well, actually, my man, they fought. It wasn't. They didn't go quietly like she said. So
especially early on, you could look up like Philip's War. Like that's one of my favorite ones. But there's like more than that. Like Philip's War is a really good. That's like one of the early ones that happened in the Northeast. But continue, because
yeah, I mean, these people did. They, the
Geechee Wars, the Seminole Wars, all of those. That's what got these people like also removed off of the lands. They were like on top of them won the land, but they were like causing a lot of problems, quote unquote. That same man John Horse that I mentioned earlier, he was you could say battle tactician, if you will, as well. they're like, we're just gonna get y'all up out of here.
Okay. Look, Riri said 8:39 p.m. Wow, we did set a record tonight. Yes, we did, Riri.
I know,
We
I'm
went off
talking.
the rails, Riri.
Be
But see,
quiet.
this when I get my mini me in here and we can talk about these things live, I think it's an enjoyment. So I'm enjoying this as much as everyone else. And if you y'all know what it is. So we do what we do. Anyway, what we try to do is be able to bring as much information as possible, make people aware of the things that are going on in the world. And if we can do that, and sometimes it's just a conversation between us, because trust me, when this camera goes off, these conversations will continue. We talk like this all the time. This is what we do in my house.
Yes.
And
I'm here to terrorize everyone.
I am
basically.
fortunate to have children that are as wise and as studied and as interested in knowledge as possible. I am happy for that. So that makes it.
Wait, I have a quick question. So what do
Okay.
y'all want us to talk about next week then? Like,
That's a good idea. I never asked my audience that. That's a great idea.
What should we talk about? We talked about a lot of things, but is there anything y'all want us to go more
Is
in
there,
depth
is there,
on?
is there any subject matter that you all would like for us to cover? Something we can do the homework for you for, and then turn around and bring you the information. What would you like to know about on our next show? That is a great idea, Tatum. Thank
I'm
you.
just going to go and say
My
John
producer
Horse.
over here, y'all. Yeah.
I'm like, let's talk about John Horse and the Seminole
Y'all know my
Wars.
baby's a news producer. See, that's what she
No.
just,
Right. I know, I'm just like, nothing. That's fine. I'll be quiet.
No, don't be quiet.
So, yes.
I keep forgetting. What do you call it? The Sky what? Skynet.
Skynet.
Is watching. Okay.
It's what, yeah, y'all inbox him and tell him or leave a comment
said
on the
she
YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel because eventually the producer says we're going to stop hosting on Facebook and they'll just be hosted on YouTube and y'all have to go over there and watch it.
Yes, she's trying to get me off of Facebook, y'all.
Yeah.
So and I'm gonna actually.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm gonna actually leave Facebook alone for before long. So we'll see you guys.
Oh, we can talk about the metaverse. Let's talk about the
Um,
metaverse. I'm sorry, ignore me. You can just mute my
Nubian
mic.
Holmes says he wants to delve into the Kurt Vonnegut direction we're going in.
Wait, who is Kurt Vonnegut? Is he like an author?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. Wait. Is it like Fight Club? Did he write Fight Club? Don't give me the line. I don't know who. I know the name. I don't know that person though.
Vonnegut-esque. I mean, I
Or
might
wait,
have
is that
pronounced it wrong. I'm thinking about Kurt Vonnegut, the author. No, he said Kurt Vonnegut-esque direction.
So y'all have to tell him to.
Wait, no. He said the Kurt Vonnegut-esque. I read that wrong.
So what is the
Direction
Kurt
we're going in.
Vonnegut direction? Help us. That is also above our pay grade. That's, we don't know.
You know this guy. This is one of the real smart dudes.
Right.
We used to say, this is one of my debate buddies. Back in the day, we would all be in Atlanta. You remember the debates I used to go to all the time?
Yeah, vaguely. Yeah.
And he and I see a lot of things pretty much eye to eye. But he's a deep brother, very deep brother. I will look into that, my man. I will definitely check into the Kurt Vonnegut-esque
Direction. Well, I want to know
we're
what
heading in.
direction is that? Because I'm like, I don't know, y'all.
Let's see, Kurt.
Even in the
Vonnegut,
playing
American
field for
Way.
everyone. The metaverse? Or I'm confused. If you could elaborate on that, sir.
Let's see. Kurt Vonnegut is known for satirical novels which frequently use postmodern techniques as well as elements of fantasy and science fiction to highlight horrors and ironies. Damn. Yeah, I need to look into
Well,
that.
that was 20.
Apparently, he's got some deep stuff going on that involves a sort of a surreal social standard that may be coming. Very interesting.
Yeah, we're definitely headed there. So we could talk more about that. Like, I actually have an article about like the techno feudal.
He said it evens the playing fields for everyone. Renee Ford said, how that cousin goes to New York and becomes all sophisticated and change their name to Metaverse. Is that cousin?
Well, metaverse is like a metaphor for like the people who don't go outside and they they'll just be inside playing video games.
There was actually I don't know if you call it a game or what it was. It was out several years ago where people lived virtual life. I knew a lady who literally lived.
What was
She
that
lived her
called?
life every day, but she lived to go home to become a part of this universe in her computer. And she was a pretty largely built woman. and really was kind of an introvert and very shy. But on this particular platform, she was a thin, nice looking woman, well kept, and very outgoing in her metaverse world, so to speak. And I think that's where we're headed. And in fact, it's going to destroy a lot of social skills. Social skills already suck.
Yeah, we can talk about that because as a millennial, things are already in shambles. Especially for Gen Z, which I'm not Gen Z, so the Zoomers, I've heard them complain that they really don't have any social skills, but. Yeah, it's like being online all the time and just kind of like not living in the real world.
Nubian says that he wrote a book where the world's most talented were weighted down to make them just as average as everyone else in a nutshell.
Everyone got a trophy.
Everyone gets a trophy. No one feeling can be hurt, and everyone else must acquiesce to a smaller select. Actually, Nubian, I'm going to tell you, I believe that we have already gone through that. I think we're actually moving out of that. Now that's just my opinion, and I say that because having been a baseball coach, in the time when I was coaching, we kind of had a similar ideology, and I think that what we're going through in terms of social upheaval and political correctness, and we can thank 45 for that. On some levels, I agree with people being able to be who they are without the weights that you are talking about being put on them, because I personally am a person who doesn't believe that everybody deserves a trophy. I believe that it's survival of the fittest. I believe that we need people to
let me finish what you were gonna say.
Well, I'm saying that because, like, just as an example, let's talk about. You always talk about people having babies and everything all over the place. Let's look at a time when women. That's my personal axe to the grind. Right, that's your personal axe to the grind. Just hate it. Let's talk about a time when women actually selected men to have children with that were worthy, that were actually the best of a breed, instead of just, oops, I made a mistake and here go a kid.
Well, see, that's already that like participation trophy mentality.
That's exactly.
Especially with like, I feel like millennials and Zoomers, which, Gen X, y'all are our parents, so y'all are really to blame, but I'm not going to go down the road. I mean, I don't have some of these problems, but I will say like the Zoomers, especially, and younger millennials, like they are super sensitive. Like they're super, super sensitive. Like anytime anyone does anything, they're like, you're coming from a place of privilege. How dare you say something?
Yeah, you got hit with that one recently, didn't you?
Oh yes. So just let everyone know, in my other metaverse life, I have popular social media accounts, and I had mentioned like how gardening, because I'm really passionate about like gardening and like local food sourcing and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, I will retire and be a farmer, but not yet. So with that being said, I was like, gardening is great. I don't know why more people don't promote it. It's basically free. And so I had all of these clear people yelling at me, so we're using code words, yelling at me, saying, you're a privileged...
They called you a privileged white woman,
yes,
didn't they?
Yes, they said I was a privileged white, because I don't have, like, my photo up, and they're like, you're a privileged, talking about gardening, and I'm like, okay, I come from, like, generations ago, my family were slaves and sharecroppers, like, the only way they ate is because they gardened. Like, excuse me, who do you think you were speaking to? Like, because, there is no, like, Whole Foods, in rural Mississippi, you know what I'm saying? So how do you think folks were eating? I'm like, this gets it back to that metaverse where folks don't live in the real world, where, the only place you can get food is if you grew it by your own hand.
Or you call Amazon.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole internet, Oh yeah, calling it, you can't do that, So it's like, these people are mad about, like, something I said about gardening. Somebody was like, I'm disabled, I can't garden. I'm like, nobody asked you to do that. Nobody asked you, you know what I'm saying? Like, I hate to kind of rant about it, but, these people are like, how dare you suggest gardening? And I'm like, why are y'all so comfortable, like, relying, not taking action in these small ways that you can take in your life? Like, we can't control everything, but, like, why not control this one thing you can't control? And that's what, like, got me to gardening. I'm like, wow, this food in the store tastes terrible. I'm going to start growing food. And, that wasn't a radical step. Like, you can get seeds for, like, 99 cents a pack at the dollar store. Like, if people were acting like I said, go buy a Bentley or something like that. Like, it was just wild. They're like, how am I supposed to garden with no farmland? And I'm like, what? Like, what? I've grown food in 5-gallon buckets, and maybe, but I wasn't going to explain myself, but just the point being, it's like, people that, like, what he's saying, like, that participation trophy mentality, it's like, these people don't want to do anything for themselves, like, they're kind of pathetic, they are weak, but, you can't say survival of the fittest because these people are not fit to survive anything. Now, if you start saying, I was also told I was a eugenicist, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
We talk about eugenics on the
I
show
was
before.
called a eugenicist because I said poor women should be more selective in who they have children with. You would have thought that I had went into someone's house and slapped their mother. I mean, I suppose I did metaphorically, because some people's mothers did not do any selective breeding. They just was spreading it wide and laying it low. So, they just having kids by anybody. I mean, even animals don't have kids
by just anybody.
Female animals do not have children. They do not reproduce with weak males. Like, it's really crazy to me. And you would think, especially, I feel like, as women, darker hued women, where things are already precarious financially, that one would not put themselves into a deficit. But, for whatever reason, like, even girls my age, I'm like, why are y'all still doing this? Like, we saw what happened in the 80s, like, when people our parents' age. Like, it's just really weird. It's like, y'all are going to carry on with this? Okay, that's fine. So, whatever. I don't know. I mean, it's none of my business. I can control my womb. But it's just like this. It's just a very loser mentality. That
What's funny you say that. I have been jumped myself online for suggesting that women should be in control of their bodies. And then they tell me, you don't have daughters. You don't have... Listen. I taught my daughters that. Be responsible for yourself.
It's just insane. I'm like,
before you're responsible for anything and anybody else.
This is just me, y'all. Like, if a woman won't control her own coochie, then she needs to stop using it. Like, you don't even know how to work it, and you out here just doing stuff. It's like you jumping behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler and deciding you're just gonna hit the road. I mean, that's even if you can get it started. And it's just like, what? You're just out here. I mean, it's just. What is the reason? Like, and women don't want to hear it. Women do have an accountability issue. Like, there's definitely some accountability problems. I feel, especially, I would say all women, but, it manifests differently in different communities. Let me say that. So, like I said, in financially precarious situations, and y'all continue to reproduce, and you wonder why your sons are in prison. Well, ma'am, you were, working at the dollar store, and then your other job overnight at Walmart stocking shelves, like, because there's no man to help, and you got the kids dropped off at your grandparents' house, it's just all trifling. Because I mean, we can see this, in any lower income community,
and it plays out over and over and over, generation to generation. You would think somebody would say, "Wait a minute."
And this is why our community is on left behind status right now, going to permanent underclass, because folks can't even get like simple stuff like. I don't want to say breeding. It's a very crass word, but I'm just going to say it. Can't even get, like, breeding and family planning together. Women be like, I'm not responsible. He should have wore a condom. Ma'am, do you not have the womb? Ma'am. Like, and there's, like, so many steps before, like, the baby gets here. You could have used the condom. Any assortment of birth control. There's so many. Plan B pills. Those are also available. Okay, fine. Then you get to the abortion part. They don't want to do that. Okay, there was an adoption. Okay, but it's like, you could have just prevented this. It's like, only you can prevent a forest fire. Like, would you please stop? It's just, then they want to cry about their baby dad. It's like, ma'am, no, I have, like, Reese, I don't know if y'all know Summer Walker. She's like a millennial R&B singer, and she is a forced baby mama to a man who, like, abused his other 3 children. And, a lot of girls my age now, we're like, okay, we don't have any sympathy for you. We don't want to hear this sad sob story no more. He had 3 other baby mamas that were evidence and proof that he was trifling and didn't like his kids and clearly has low self-esteem, so he keeps shooting up everybody's club. But you went on and decided that it's not funny, but it's like, you decided I should be the 4th baby mama. She thought she was special because she got low self-esteem, and, it's like, you thought you were going to be different. And it's like, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. Because let them tell it, it's a small percentage of black men that have most of the kids in the community anyway. So it's men like that. Like, they've got 4, 5, 6 baby mamas. And it's like, when do the women say to themselves, why would I want to involve myself in this foolishness?
That requires common sense.
And you know what? But see, it's like, should you have kids? Like, do you deserve to have kids? Which I know is a sketchy topic when it comes to, like, black women reproduction. But then I'm also like, black women should be the first people in line for abortion. Like, do we not know what it's like to have no control over one's womb? Like, did our foremothers not have to deal with that? So, like, why would you bring life here that you don't even really want, you know? Like, but that's just me. We're going to let it...
Well,
I'm be quiet.
Ladies and gentlemen, and I'm so happy, y'all, that my child has taken the reins and gone ham. Because I have encouraged her... because I've encouraged her in the past to have a show of her own. And she just refuses. And, you know...
Because I'm inflammatory. Like, I don't know. My delivery is not as nice as your delivery. Like, I just am a very blunt person. And so it causes people to get mad. They get very angry. Like, if y'all can see some of the stuff that people have said to me, because I said, it gets out of pocket. So,
well, you know what they say? Hit dogs holler. We say it here all the time.
Yeah, you know I don't care. Because, I mean, the truth is the truth. You know, women need to do better. Close your legs.
That part.
I mean, you know, until it's time to actually... You know what? I'm going to stop. I'm going to be quiet.
With that said, ladies and gentlemen, we were supposed to be talking about the movie The Harder They Fall. And I think we are talking about The Harder They Fall.
Great movie because it was no, like, slave trauma porn, which we've been getting a lot of lately. Yeah. You know, and I think watching some of the stuff gets a little triggering. Even though it didn't happen to us, but I'd be like, no, I can't. Like, I don't like dealing with all that, you know. So I like that the show was just like a good adventure. You know, it was just a good adventure story, revenge story, and it was like really great. It was just great. Like, it was just a good movie. Like, 10 out of 10. We need more of that. Like, just give us regular stories with like portray black people as regular people who have like family and problems and like lives. You know, everything does not need to revolve around like slavery and massa and some weird like civil rights stuff. You know, it doesn't need to be that all the time. Like, and then they pick the same people over and over again too. So I like this because we have not had these people portrayed ever. Like, nobody knows Cherokee Bill
there's
like,
no cocaine involved.
No drugs.
Ain't no police involved.
Minimal drinking. Like, there's no like Black Lives Matter. Somebody got shot. Like, none of that. Like, it's just a good movie. No social justice warrior topics. Like, I love it.
All right, that it, baby?
I'm done. I'm done.
Until
next time.
You're not done. Okay.
I know. I'm a rant in the house. I'm not ranting on camera no more.
Guess what? This is what I'm going to do. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a guest host. I'm going to let Tatum have the show for next week.
Oh no.
We're going to listen to her. Oh no. No, you're a hit. And I'm going to turn you loose on this station. You're going to do your thing. We're going to get her ready, y'all. We're going to have a great show next week. Y'all pay attention and stay tuned.
I'm sweating in my
Look,
cashmere.
I got people on here talking about they cannot wait. See? This
No. Okay, well that's fine, but I am sweating on my cashmere sweater, and so that's just, you know, I got to go ahead and
Girl, you silly.
It's expensive. I got to hand wash.
Y'all, we went 2 hours tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming and hanging out and kicking it with us. And man, these shows, they don't get no better than this. This is, you know, even though we got off the topic a little bit, we did cover what we was going to cover. Huh? Well, yeah,
thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
But everybody, my beautiful daughter, my mini-me, my twin.
People.
Somebody said twinning on here.
Yes.
My twin.
Yes.
And as y'all can see, look, listen, we all want our children to be better than us. And I am often taken aback and amazed by my child's ability to convey her message. Y'all don't understand how much that means to me. With that said, thank you all for hanging out with us for these 2 hours. You got a whole hour in for yourself. You could have just done the show.
Oh, shout out to whoever said I kind of look like Mom a little bit. Just a little bit. At a certain angle.
I had her.
It's
anyway.
fine. No, yes, we know. I mostly look like you. She contributed a little bit.
Y'all, everybody have yourselves a fantastic weekend.
Yes.
And we gonna
start a garden.
Y'all heard that. Come on, keep it coming. What else?
You know, go harass your local politicians. Please. Harass them. Let them know that we are not 3/5 of a vote. We still matter, okay? Like, damn it.
I'm waiting because
I was done.
You just keep dropping gems.
That was it. You know, don't let them. Don't let us be the permanent underclass, y'all.
That's
or
right.
You can start a micro garden too, micro green garden. Just
y'all.
hop on YouTube. You know, buy a juicer, get a blender, make sure you're working out, because you know plague is still out here, you know. So stay safe, stay healthy.
Get your workout on, because if you ever have to start moving around because things get ugly, you want to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, y'all, we gone. Because if I don't leave now, she gonna say something else.
Nope,
we
I'm
gonna
done.
keep
I'm done. I promise.
She'll be back next week. Only this time, I'm gonna turn her loose.
Oh God.
Y'all have a good night. We gone. Love, peace, and chicken grease. We are out of here. Say bye, Tatum.
Bye.
Bye, Tatum. Bye, y'all.